Wyclef Jean, BKS1 Radio. Let's go.
This is Essence Atkins, and this is BKS1 Radio.
Hi, this is Melba Moore, and you're listening to BKS1 Radio.
Yo, check it out. What's the deal? This the chef. Giving a big shout out to my peoples. Big KS, you already know what it is. Salute.
What's up? It's your girl Monifa, and I'm hanging with BKS1 Radio.
Hi, I'm Iyanla Van Zandt, and you're listening to BKS1 Radio.
BKS Radio, baby.
Hey, this is Jasmine Guy for BKS1 Radio.
What's going on? This is Lamont Rooker, and this is BKS1 Radio.
Shout out to BKS1, the best kept damn secret in the business.
Hey, what's up? This is Raven Goodwin from BET's Being Mary Jane, and shout out to BKS1.
Hi, this is Leon, and you're watching BKS1 Radio.
BKS1. God bless y'all. Wyclef Jean, BK.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Happy Tuesday, and welcome to BKS1 Radio, the Owl Show. It is your girl, Latoya Chanel, and I am so happy to be in the building today because we have a great an amazing show for you tonight with an amazing guest that I am going to bring on in just a minute. But first and foremost, I want to know, how are you all doing? You know that we are in the process of being on this healing journey. That's my Zen look, everybody. Everybody who's listening on Spotify, you don't get a chance to really see my Zen look, but we're on the healing journey, everybody. And I want to know, how are you doing? Talk to me in the chat. If you're watching live right now on Facebook or on YouTube, you can talk to me and let me know, how's your healing journey going, or what phase or leg of the journey are you in? And let's talk about it. Let's discuss. In the meantime, if you're watching on Facebook or if you're watching on YouTube, you are about to see an amazing guest. If you're listening on the TuneIn app, or if you just so happen to be listening on Spotify 24 hours from now, welcome to the show. First and foremost, I want to shout out BKS1 Radio, because if you haven't seen it, if you haven't seen the BKS1 Radio post, July 4th, everybody, July 4th, we are doing a concert after the parade in the park, and it is going to be so dope. We have a wonderful lineup of DJs. Nice and Smooth is going to be out. We have a few guest artists that are going to be coming. You honestly don't want to miss this. And I know I put that in my post, you don't want to miss this, but let me tell you something. You don't want to miss this. Absolutely. Grandmaster Melly Mel is going to be there. There are so many people. You don't want to miss it. So come out with your family and enjoy the parade in the morning. We'll be there hosting in the morning, and then come to Cedarbrook Park in the afternoon from 3 to 10, right before we do the fireworks, and enjoy yourself. It is going to be absolutely awesome. So just taking care of a few, housekeeping things, and I really want to get into the show because we only have an hour. And let me just tell you a little bit about this guest. I was introduced to Dr. Claire Greenforde maybe a couple of months ago. We finally found a time to talk because our schedules are so busy. And we talked the first time, just got a feel for each other, exactly what's going on, what we both do. And then we got a chance to talk for the second time, really pretty much about this show and about the topic for tonight. Now, anyone who knows me knows I have a lot to say, most times in most conversations. And she started talking, and even though we were on the phone, I literally sat like this, just with my face in my hands, and I was like, enlightening, intelligent, whatever. I'm just going to go ahead and get into it. So I want you all to help me welcome to the virtual studio right now. This is Dr. Claire Greenforde. Can we just clap it up for Dr. Claire Greenforde? Dr. Claire, how are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for such a kind introduction. I'm like, you're not supposed to make my makeup run before we even start the show.
It was because it's absolutely true. It is literally true. We had a discussion last week and we were like, okay, just, going over some points of what we were going to discuss. And after she finished, I said, yes, all of that. And she was like, okay, well, I want points. I said, yes, all of it. Every single thing that you said we need to discuss because it's important and it's imperative to us all. And in this world now, where everyone has a DEI program and some sort of diversity and inclusion training, it's imperative that we are not just doing it to check a box, but we're actually listening and we're actually paying attention and taking heed and making it a part of our lives and making it a part of our everyday journey. So first and foremost, Dr. Claire, can you just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what it is that you do?
Absolutely. And again, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think you're absolutely fantastic. So we are in great Black Girl Magic company right now. Yes. I am Dr. Claire Greenforde. I am an unapologetic racial and social justice warrior working at the intersection of mental health, racial and social justice, advocacy, and policy, and firmly rooted in anti-racist, anti-oppressive practices. I am a trained mental health practitioner, and my own journey of healing influenced the way that I understand and consult around healing, particularly in spaces of healing and care, like whether it's nonprofit, for-profit, corporations, whatever it is, we are human beings first. You mentioned often people are checking boxes. My goal is to check hearts.
Oh, yes. And I love that. And as you mentioned, this month, the month of May, is Mental Health Awareness Month. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So every year in America, May is the month that we acknowledge mental health awareness, but mental health is every single day. We have seen the implications of mental health from our youth all the way up to people who are more seasoned and mature, as my mom will say. And I think it is really important that we understand the humanity needed to fully embrace our mental health and wellness. When we don't address our mental health and wellness, we are dehumanizing ourselves. And we already get enough messages, particularly of people of the global majority, that we're not enough, we're not valued. We see stories every single day, multiple times a day, of efforts to deconstruct our voice, deconstruct our lived experience, and gaslight us. And so one of the first things I always tell people is, while we acknowledge Mental Health Awareness Month in May, your mental health goes with you every single day, because your mental health is your health. Health is wealth. And if we don't address our mental health and wellness, we are going to either burn out, burn up, or we're going to cause a lot of destruction, not only in ourselves, but in others. And so for me, this is a lifelong journey. It's an everyday commitment to radical self-care and self-love when we commit to our own mental health and wellness journey.
Absolutely. One of the topics that we discussed, and I'm going to go to one of our first bullet points here, was workplace wellness. Because that was the main topic I wanted to discuss today, because I feel like people touch on it, but we don't recognize how serious this is. We spend more time at work, and even working from home, we spend more time talking to and dealing with our coworkers than we do our own families most times. And yet, when we think of mental health, most people don't think about how that environment can really affect you. So I want you to tell everyone who is watching tonight a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I will start with the research base, because I am also an academic, and it is so important that we understand that what we experience individually is not just us. Oftentimes we think that we are the problem. Maybe if I just go to work a little bit earlier, if I just try to ignore this coworker, if I do XYZ more, this will get better. And the reality is that workplace wellness is significantly impairing the functioning of not only the workforce, but families. You mentioned that we spend more time with our work than with our families, and that is so true. And if you have an unhealthy, toxic environment, you cannot thrive. Human beings are not designed to thrive in toxicity. A short amount of stress is tolerable. But if you're thinking about compounded stress day in, day out, whether you are being targeted because you are a person of the global majority, whether you're being targeted because you're LGBTQ+, whether you're being targeted because of a disability, whether you're being targeted because of cultural, religious, whatever identities, those things significantly impair your functioning. The Surgeon General last year came out and discussed the implications of toxic workplace on our mental health and wellness. US companies lose tens of billions of dollars every single year, anywhere between 45 billion with a B to 75, 80 billion dollars a year in lost productivity and lost wages because of mental dis-ease and unwellness among the workforce. If we don't care about people, and if we only care about profits over people, your lack of concern about the people is significantly harming your profits. Because we're talking about the gross GDP of many countries is what America is losing every year because we have this work, just act like you're a robot. And I tell people, robots need to take a break. Robots are shut down. Robots have to be serviced, and we are not robots. And so the discomfort in our body, because the word disease carries a lot of weight with it. And I often break it down. It's dis-ease. We have a dis-ease in our body, a dis-ease in our system, a dis-ease in our minds, a dis-ease in our soul. And when things are not in balance, that can carry over in every aspect of your life. What we see now, particularly when it comes to workplace wellness and toxicity in the workplace, particularly for women of the global majority, there's a reason why many people are still saying, I actually prefer to stay home rather than go back into the office. We have seen lots of studies and women of the global majority saying, I don't have to deal with the microaggressions. And I often say there's nothing micro about the aggressions. People are reporting ability to sleep better, because one of the things that we don't connect is the physical implications of our mental dis-ease. Our minds, that is the best computer that has ever been created. No Apple, no nothing that will ever be created will outcompute the human brain. But the human brain needs to be nurtured. Our bodies need to be nurtured. And what we see with workplace implications and stress, higher incidences of absenteeism or presenteeism when you're there, but you're really checked out, more irritation, inattention to detail, more mistakes, costing the company money because perhaps you are out sick a lot, missed deadlines. We are also seeing those implications in our physical health and wellness. And I say this particularly for women and birthing people. It is so important that we address this in a way that says boundaries are our friend and boundaries are what I'm going to maintain every day because it's a matter of life and death. We're seeing reports talking about implications for reproductive health, whether that means inability to sustain a pregnancy or even get pregnant, inability to sleep well, inability to eat well, inability to focus well. All of these are outcomes of toxic workplaces or harmful spaces, whether it's work or not. And so when we think about our mental health in one lane, which is what we've often considered it, right? Like somebody has a mental health need. Your mental health is your health. Your brain controls every aspect of your body, from breathing to walking, to running, to clapping, to speaking, to seeing. All of these things, if we have the privilege to be able to walk, to be able to see, all of these functions are controlled by our brain. And if your main computer system is not functioning, you are not functioning. We're seeing earlier deaths. Significantly earlier deaths happening. The life expectancy for Black women in America has gone down since the onset of the pandemic. So has that for Native and Indigenous people. So has that for lots of marginalized groups. America is considered one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and yet we have the poorest health. And that has a lot to do with our mental health and our physical health not being in alignment.
Does everyone see exactly why I just sat in silence? I told you we had a conversation a few weeks ago and she began talking and I just said, There's so many things I want to pull out of what you said. The first one being, and I am a mother. I'm a mother of two. The first one being your reproductive health being linked to toxic work environments. Can you just expound on that a bit more?
Absolutely. So stress is any demand in our body, right? So when we think of stress, we often think of like the negative thing, like I'm stressed. But the reality is if you are a runner and you decide to go running, that exertion on your body is stress. Stress can be positive, negative, or neutral. But when we have sustained stress over a long period of time, that may cause dis-ease in our bodies, anxiety, feelings of depression, being incredibly, tearful all the time, inability to sleep. What happens in our bodies is our bodies go, wait, survival mode. What do we need to do to focus? You may have difficulty conceiving because of the stress going on. When we are stressed, we have so much cortisol flooding our bodies. Cortisol is the hormone that will literally help you gain weight if you don't want to gain weight. So for all people who are just like, I can't get this belly fat off, I can't get this, it could be connected to the fact that you're flooded with so much stress. So when we think about what stress is doing, if stress is any demand on a system, if the demand on the system overrides the system's capacity to hold that demand and maintain that demand, the system breaks. And so we're going to see breaks in gut health, right? Your gut is your second brain. We're going to see breaks in your gut health. You may have challenges with, eating or nausea or bloating or pain. You may have issues with migraines. You may have issues with insomnia, and you may have issues with reproductive health, because we don't know how each person's body will respond to stress, but we do know that there are higher incidences for women and women-identified individuals to be stressed, particularly when we look at stats that show that Black women experience depression at 2 times or more that of the general population, or compared to Black men, or compared to white males, for example. When we look at the fact that Black women in America are not safe trying to get pregnant or being pregnant or post-pregnancy, because Black women are more, and birthing people are more likely to die, 3 times more likely to die than white counterparts in America today, pre or postpartum. That is a result of structural racism. So the concept that, I'm really talking about is weathering. And the theory of weathering says that over time, with consistent stress connected to social factors, experiences of discrimination, all of these aspects that minoritized and racialized body experience, there is a physical deterioration of the body. So stats, that show that Black women or Asian women or Hispanic women are more likely to have certain diseases in their bodies could be connected to the carrying of the stress and the weathering or the wear and tear on their bodies. There are some recent research reports that came out that said that when Dr. Martin Luther King died, his heart was that of someone 20, 30 years older than what he was when he died. And that could possibly be the connection of the weathering his body experienced with constantly being under threat of being killed, constantly having attacks and being thrown in jail, constantly being dehumanized, and his fight along with other people to make sure that Black people and other marginalized bodies were recognized as humans. And so that is really what we're dealing with. And so when we think about the stress in our bodies, it is very plausible and it's very likely for many people that challenges with getting pregnant or sustaining a pregnancy could be directly connected to the stress that they're experiencing because of marginalization, because of oppression, because of harms, because of toxic workplaces, because of toxic family relationships. There's so many stories of people who were having difficulty getting pregnant for a year or whatever it is, and left their toxic workplace or left a harmful relationship or left a toxic family, and then they were able to conceive. Because your body is going to focus on the primary things that are necessary for your survival. And while they're not necessarily to my knowledge, research that specifically says this is what it is, I firmly believe that a lot of the challenges that Black women, and particularly women of the global majority, have when it comes to reproductive health, whether it's fibroids, endometriosis, all of this is our body's genetic response to the dehumanization that we've had for years. This is my theory, but the evidence for me, particularly being in this space for so long, it's causation at some point. It's like, is this a correlation? Is what causation is not correlation, and correlation is not causation, but there's too many examples of this for us not to consider the deeper implications and impact.
And so what can we do? So you mentioned workplace wellness. and you being in diversity, equity, and inclusion, when you're going into these corporations and you're speaking with them, how do you even pose this to the corporation so that they can take care of their human resources?
One of the things that I had said earlier was, while many people are trying to check boxes, I'm trying to check hearts. And I also noted that people tend to focus on profits over people. And so I have to understand the system, right? Who am I speaking to? What is my audience? What are the pain points for the leaders in this space? And I believe everyone is a leader in a space. But what are the pain points? What are the things that they're really focused on? The goal of business is to sustain, grow, and innovate so that they can continue to thrive and be the top of the market. And what I will say to organizations is, if you don't care about your people, that's fine, but you're not caring about your profits. And so having the conversation about numbers is what will make some people listen. Other people are like, yes, we know this is a problem, but I often tell people having the yes, but then really it's no, because in practice, in accountability, in policies, in your procedures, it's not reflective of what you say. That is also harming you, because then you have people exiting your organization, or you have people coming into your organization and then who are amazing and excellent, but because of how you treat them, they leave or they're doing something else. And so it depends on the system. It depends on the human beings. One of the things I always tell people is that we tend to dehumanize organizations, right? We say that company, this organization, that organization and that company is run by, led by, and staffed by organisms, the human body as an organism. So it's not some being that is not human. It is a human being. There are human beings making the decision every single day to dehumanize and invalidate lived experiences of other human beings. And there are human beings making the decision every single day to validate and humanize the experience of the human beings that they work with. And so it really depends on what lens this person or these organizational leaders are coming from. Many people talk to me about profits. And when I'm able to connect the points of innovation, diversity and belonging and inclusion, all those things are important. But in the absence of accountability, DEI measures are for naught. They really are. And so when we think about how your workforce, through innovation, through DEI, through inclusive practices, through accountability practices, through accessibility practices, and through honoring the dignity and worth of each human being can naturally thrive, then I can talk to you about what your legacy is. What legacy do you want your organization to have? Do you want your organization to 50 years from now still be in existence, or are you running this organization just for the next 5 years? And putting things that way, I've never heard anyone say, oh, we want to be out of business in 5 years.
Right.
So then my push is, if you want to maintain business and you have to work with the humans who are your business, the profitability in investing in the people that make you money far outweighs the risk of not doing it. Because whether your insurance costs are going up because people are calling out and having to use insurance more, whether or not you're constantly having to rehire because you have open positions every other day because people are quitting and leaving, whether or not you have horrible reviews on Glassdoor, whether or not people are saying, I don't know about this company, your thriving, your success as an organization depends on how much you value the organisms within it.
The second part to that question, you and I began mentioning some sort of cultural antidotes to dealing with workplace toxicity and how to get to workplace wellness. Can you just talk about that for a minute?
Absolutely. And so when we think about truly embracing mental health and wellness through a lens that is culturally humble, culturally curious, culturally responsive, and culturally respectful, that means including those communities, including those people into what practices are honoring to them. I am a trained mental health provider, and I will tell you, everybody doesn't need therapy. It's not the intervention for everyone. Perhaps it is because of a spiritual identity. Perhaps it's being in community with others in a spiritual community. Perhaps it is in your workspace Do you have spaces in your if you have an office, do you have spaces for people to go and engage their spiritual and belief systems, right? Do you have a space that is honoring for that? Because for many people, religion can be a huge, huge benefit in addressing health and wellness. Do you have things that encourage people to take breaks and go take walks? Being in nature has been shown to help significantly improve our mental health and wellness. The experience of being surrounded by grass, not for people like me that are allergic and pollen is not my friend, but for people who can survive, you know, with the pollen, whatever that is, whatever those aspects are for you. Physical exercise has been shown in some studies to have more efficacy than medications for depression for some people. So it is not a one trick pony. It's many things and many tools, but being consistent in that. Do you have a panel of providers should someone want to engage therapeutic services that is reflective of the staff and the clients you serve? I can tell you that over 80% of mental health providers in this country are white. But this country is not 80% white.
Right.
And so when you have spaces, particularly we've seen since the onset of the pandemic, and of course, this month marks 3 years that Mr. Floyd was murdered. This month marked 2 days ago, you know, a year since the Buffalo massacre in upstate New York. Last week, we had the murder of Jordan Neely on New York City subway. All of this is activating for people, is traumatic for people. So if you don't have systems that acknowledge the weathering, acknowledging the fact that the cumulative stress and the load, which is the allostatic load that people are carrying, is significantly harming them, then we can't even start with what may be culturally responsive. Culturally responsive to me, particularly in a workspace, means if you have Jewish women and you have Muslim women who are observant, then perhaps you have a space where they can go that is just for women. Not because you're trying to be exclusionary, but because you're trying to be inclusive of these women and people of different cultural and religious identities, so that they can have a space where they're not saying, oh my gosh, I can't, you know, what if my hijab falls off? What if my wig falls off? Because that's stressful. That to me is an example of culturally responsive care and culturally responsive things that organizations can do that does not require a lot of effort in terms of finances, in terms of how do we figure this out. We have people who identify as Muslim. We have people who identify as Christian. We have people who identify as Jewish. We have people who identify as Buddhist. We have people who identify as Sikh. Ask. That is how we begin to be culturally responsive. When I think of support groups, particularly for Black women, Asian women, Native women, kinship networks are incredibly important. How do we get in community? Being in community is vital to the human mind, the human soul, the human spirit. The human body needs water. The human body needs food. The human body needs connection.
Yes.
We can survive in nature. Maybe we don't have proper shelter. Maybe we don't have, you know, proper resources, but we can't survive without water. We can't survive without air. We can't survive without food, and we can't survive without community. So when we think about culturally responsive care, it means care that is community-based, instead of putting the onus on an individual to navigate systemic bias, systemic oppression, systemic discrimination on their own. It calls for collective care, community care, being in a community and a network that says, I'm holding you accountable to make sure that you are focusing on your wellness. I'm holding you accountable to get up and go take that walk. I'm holding you accountable to go drink that water, to go eat that food, to go scream outside. And I hope that you hold me accountable for the same thing. Because when we think about it through a collective care, it says, I see you. I honor the human that you are in hopes that you honor the human that I am becoming. That is culturally responsive care.
All right, listen. If you just tuned into the OWWH Show right here on BKS1 Radio, you have already missed a lot. Dr. Claire Greenforde has been dropping 8 million gems, jewels, tips, whatever it is you want to call them. You really need to be here and listening, because she is teaching a class. She is teaching a course. And this is not only for business, this is for individuals as well. To everyone who is listening right now, either on TuneIn, Spotify, Facebook, YouTube, I welcome you to send comments in the chats, and we're just going to keep going with the show. One of the main things I love that you said, first of all, I loved absolutely everything that you said, but one of the main things that stood out to me is that therapy is not only seeing a therapist. I advocate for therapy at all times. I have a therapist. Everyone knows that I talk to my therapist all the time about any and everything, but that's not for everyone. Therapy can be different for you. I had a conversation with a few of my girlfriends at work, and we were talking about the community portion being therapy. Sometimes just being around people, sometimes just being around those that you feel like you are connected to is therapy for some folks. Mm-hmm. And we don't realize how heavy that can weigh on people. The same thing with going to a gym, or having time to go to a gym, or companies or corporations providing the time for you to go to a walk, or even caring about scheduling meetings during your lunchtime, because maybe you do need to go get up and get that drink of water. Maybe you do need to make sure you're eating a healthy lunch, because that could be therapy for you, given everything that is going on and everything that you're dealing with. And what we don't realize in taking care of our fellow man is just having respect, or having enough respect to say, you know what? This is another human being that needs this or needs that in order to thrive throughout this day. And like you said, we are not machines. We are not robots. We are human beings. And if you want this human organism to be able to be productive for you, you need to make sure that you're nurturing that human organism in the way that they need to be nurtured. And it's so imperative that companies are listening to these messages. And just like I said when we started the show, diversity, equity, inclusion isn't a new term, but it's relatively new in corporations, where everyone's saying, oh, we need to be a part of this, and this is something that we need to look into. But it's imperative. Mm-hmm. It's imperative. And it's a sign of the times that, yes, there are, as much as things stay the same, there are some things that are changing. And hopefully through these discussions and conversations and individuals like you coming into corporations to say, hey, maybe you would have less turnover if you cared a little bit more about your employees, and not just from a top level perspective, but just giving them real details like you just did in the discussion just now, just saying, hey, maybe if you give everybody time to do this, or think about this, or look at things from this aspect, maybe people will be more comfortable, mm-hmm. less stressed out, and then in turn be more productive to you. If you have to, like you said, have to break it down into a number sense. I just, everything you're saying is, it's common sense. But so many of us don't know this. So many of us don't think about things from this aspect, and how in choosing a position within your career, or choosing whom you're going to work for, or even starting your own business and bringing others in to work with you, how important it is. It's the people that you work around. It's not necessarily what you're doing for a living, because you may love what you do, but it's the people that you work around. It's that energy, it's that spirit, it's the corporate, the corporate spirit, that you're in, that can determine your own family legacy. Mm-hmm. And it's like we really, really, really have to make sure that we are taking these conversations seriously. Like you said, not just checking a box, but making sure that we are checking hearts. So God, we can really do it.
You're wrapping up too. I'm sitting here like, yes. Like you are, so Absolutely.
We could really do an entire series on this. I'm just going to go and read some of the comments right now. We have a woman that came on. She was saying, yes, that's her mother that has like fibroids. She was talking about, dealing with workplace stress. Someone else just said, oh, good evening from one of our councilmen in town here. And someone said, we have to make sure we show ourselves that same respect. And then she also said, how do you not lose sight of yourself when trying to care for and accommodate everyone else? And I'm glad she said that, because I want to shift into another part of the discussion, because we did talk about being a caregiver as well as your duties at work. So everyone here knows, I've told everyone that my life changed drastically about a year or so ago, which put me on this healing journey. My mother became very ill, and I became her caregiver. And that is, what I do now, amongst other things. And I had taken a step back from the show. I had taken a step back from life pretty much in general, just to try to wrap my mind around what was happening, my new role, what it is I needed to do. And so, as mentioned in this comment, how are you able to deal with workplace stress and then in turn take care of small children, aging parents, whomever, a spouse, a sick family member, someone just other than yourself? How are you able to do that in a healthy manner?
I really love this, and I know we spoke about it, and I first want to acknowledge that it is an incredibly difficult, painful place to be in. Just as much as there can be joy in it, there can be a lot of pain, because when you are in the middle, where you are caring for your parents and you're caring for your children or whoever's under your ward, if you're caring for your colleagues, perhaps you are the leader at your role and you have team members under you, it's very easy to be in a position of give. And while this is so cliche and we say it all the time, you truly cannot give from an empty well. If you are in a position where you are tasked with this, I think one of the main things is being able to recognize for yourself where your boundaries are and where you need help. And that means saying to people like what you did. I love the fact that you said, I took a step back from the show.
Yeah.
This is something you care about.
Yes.
This is something you start, but you said, I step back from this. Many people, because of a sense of duty and obligation, will run themselves literally into the grave because of this sense of I have to. But if you needed to step back, that says to me that you got to a point where it was literally your wellness or not.
Yeah.
And you recognize that in order to sustain your wellness, to sustain your life, you had to step back. And part of stepping back is also stepping forward to say, I need help. I can't do this. I'm not your superwoman.
Oh my gosh.
Right? My mom used to play that song for my twin sister and I all the time as kids. So it's just like, I love this song.
Yes.
But I'm not. And being able to say, I need help with this, particularly when I'm going to speak, women and women identified individuals are socialized to be self-sacrificing, socialized to do all the things, and the expectations are still caregiving expectations. Because of the pandemic, we saw, regardless of socioeconomic status or position, women, and particularly women of the global majority, were significantly impacted in the workplace. And now gains that took 60 years to get took 1 year to undo. Women have left the workforce in droves because from C-suite to entry level and everything in between in all industries, because of the burden of caregiving. Because we still live in a society as progressive as we say we are, that still says, how did your mother do that to you? How could you not take care? We still live in a society that expects you're the daughter, you're the mother, you're the wife, you're the sister, you should. We are conditioned and socialized to be nurturing. Men are incredibly loving and kind and nurturing. When we think about babies, people often say babies bond with their mother. Well, research has debunked that, particularly research coming out of Israel. Babies, the oxytocin, the chemical that's released, similar levels between birth mother, birth father for connection. Babies bonding with whoever's taking care of them.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with gender identity, gender expression, or reproductive organs. It has to do with you being a human and engaging the humanity that you have. I always tell people, you don't need a therapy license to say to somebody, how are you doing?
Yeah.
You just need to be human.
Mm.
And so when we think about the burden of caregivers.
I love that. I'm sorry. I love that.
No, it's fine. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, when we think about the burden of caregivers, when people in your circle, when we go back to that collective care, know that the burden is on you, the onus is upon all those people in the system to also step up and say help. If you have a sibling or not, maybe you don't have siblings, maybe it's you, but maybe that means if you have a child or a spouse, hey, go for a walk for 2 hours. I got this.
Yeah.
What do you need?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's I need to scream. I
Mhm.
need to cry. I need to ball up in the shower and just sit there and rock. I need to go for a walk and yell and curse at God because I'm angry if I have a higher power. I need to sleep.
Mhm. Yeah.
Those things, the things that we need, are the same things that all people need when it comes to the basics. And so caregivers, particularly someone in your position who is sandwiched between the two,
Yes.
I applaud you for not only stepping back, but I applaud you for sharing your story because there's victory in vulnerability. And I recognize that as a marginalized body, that vulnerability takes risk because we have been conditioned and told for centuries and still to this day that our tears don't matter, that our pain does not matter, and that our experiences are not real. So I applaud you for taking this time and then coming back and saying, this is how I'm going to shift this.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about the things that are important to me, that are impacting me. Because by doing that, you also give somebody else the permission, if they feel they need it, or if they didn't know they didn't, to speak their truth, to push back. And that's a negotiation in all relationships.
Yeah.
So maybe it's saying to your kids, hey, I need you to help out with grandma today. Or saying to your partner, if you have a partner, I need you to help out today.
Yeah.
I need you to help out for 2 hours. It's saying to your staff, I'm going to be here 2 hours later, or I'm leaving 2 hours early, or I have an emergency and I'm going to have to go. It's telling your team at work, this is what's going on in my life to a level, because I don't believe in disclosing everything in your spaces of work, because the concept of psychological safety, I'm very challenged with that. There's no such thing to me fully in the workspace, because what's safe to me is not safe for you. But being upfront about where your boundaries are, that's one of the first things to me, and how you engage it, and being honest with yourself and having things that are honoring to you. If you like to read and you can't read for an hour like you used to, make sure that you read for 5 minutes. If you used to work out for an hour and you can't do that, the 5-minute walk is okay. We often think we have to do these big things. And when we don't do these big things, it's like, I failed. But the reality is that those happy hormones and happy drugs in our brain, the dopamine, the serotonin, all of those things are released for different reasons. And just making those small steps consistently. And when you don't do it consistently, recognizing that relapse is part of the process of healing. And you may be at step 10 today, and tomorrow you're right back at step -0.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. But for caregivers and people who are in this space, boundaries, 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 and communicating your needs. As humans, and particularly when we're in partnership, whether it's your spouse, your friends, you should know. We have this thing that people should know. Well, we've been friends for 20 years. You should know. I believe in God, and I firmly identify as Christian. In my spirituality and relationship, the only being that I know that knows all is God. I don't know. My husband is an incredible human being. He is a firefighter for New York City. I'm constantly praying and scared. And guess what? When we have arguments or disagreements or heated fellowship, I'm like, he's like, well, you should know. I don't know because you didn't tell me.
Yeah.
How do I know if you didn't tell me?
Yeah.
And similarly, I may say, well, I told you this 2 weeks ago. He's like, well, babe, I forgot.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we are keeping boundaries, we're communicating, and we're centering ourselves. In order to be selfless, you need to be self full. It is not selfish. It is self-preservation.
Woo! Oh my gosh! I'm just, you know what? Yep. There we go. 'Cause in order to be selfless, we have to be self-full because it's not selfish. It's self-preservation. We need that on a T-shirt, a couple of bumper stickers, a banner, some sort of helicopter plane or something going on, because that's amazing. That is amazing. That's awesome. And I'm so glad you said it. So I'm one of the chairs of the Caregivers ERG within my corporation. And initially, when we began the Caregivers ERG, we were thinking about what we were doing as a part of the organization and what we were and how things should run. And, you know, are we going to be more educational and just allow others to know, you know, our plight, what it is that, you know, we're all going through. And then we had a meeting one day and it was like, wait a minute. We did not join this employee resource group to do more work in helping everyone else. Basically, I don't know how all the other ERGs work, but this one in particular, we need to be taking care of ourselves within this group. So what can we implement that's saying, hey, we know outside of here or even within here, you take care of everyone else. So what we need to be doing is making sure that we are putting activities in place or discussions in place or conversations in place so that it's focused on you, because we know because you're a part of this, you don't get a lot of that. Mm-hmm. So we had to shift our focus from being more educational to just being more, no, we're kind of like a club. You know what? Mm-hmm. We come in, we talk about our woes, we talk about what's going on, we share information. This daycare, this learning tool, how to take care of elderly parents, insurance, you know, all of that. Hospice care, you know, we share a bit of everything within that group. And it's really, and then our activities are centered around making us better. They're centered around wellness for the individuals that are in the group and less about educating an institution on what it's like to becoming a caregiver, because then all we're doing is tasking ourselves with another duty. So I'm so glad that you said that. And that was a part of our boundary as a group. It was like, hey, wait a minute. None of us joined to put on another cap. Mm-hmm. That we're already doing that. That's why we're all here. That's why we're all, you know, in fellowship here, because we already wear way too many hats as it is. So we're joining this because there has to be a space for us to breathe. There has to be a space for us to grow, and there has to be a space for us to connect with other individuals who are dealing with what it is that we're dealing with. So I'm so glad that you mentioned all of that, because again, that's amazing. I know we have a few minutes left in the show, and I always like to end, you know, on a positive note with what it is that we can do. And I know we started going into it when we were just talking about, you know, culturally, you know, different things that we can do for healing. And I know you mentioned, you know, therapy is not just sitting down talking to a therapist, because talking isn't therapy for everyone. But I just want you to go back to that a bit. And if you're dealing with workplace stress or a toxic work environment, what are some of the things that we can do to minimize some of that?
So I will say that we may not be able to minimize it, because if a culture is toxic, it's toxic, right? Mm-hmm. Like if a space is toxic, the only way to minimize it is to leave it, right?
Yeah.
Because there are some systems that are not interested in shifting, and we have to acknowledge that. But going back to cultural response, what you talked about just now with the caregiver ERG is a cultural response, because often, particularly in American context, because of America's love affair with racism and discomfort with it, we only think of culture with skin color, right? That's what we think of it, right? Culture is, I always say, America has a deep love affair with racism.
And a discomfort with it.
And a discomfort with it. It's very odd.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
But the truth of the matter is that what you just described to me is beautiful. I've actually never heard of a caregiver ERG. So kudos to you and your organization for saying this is a need.
Yes.
Because oftentimes people are doing LGBTQ ERG and Black ERG and Asian ERG, but caregivers, not only does that allow people across different identities to be able to see a shared connection and humanity and a bond, but it also says this is important because this is impacting how we show up at work. When I come to work and I look frazzled and I'm checked out, it's because I was up all night with my child or my parent. When I have to rush from the meeting, it's because I got an emergency call from the doctor's office. And this is not about you. This is about what I am going through. So when you see me in this space, give me the grace.
Ooh.
Give me the grace of my humanity that I am deserving of. To recognize that what I am going through right now is weighing on my soul, on my spirit, on my body. And I cannot engage in anything other than self-preservation right now. And so I love the fact that you said, no, we're not going to be teaching and educating people and no, this is a support group. So culturally responsive care is that we are in community. While I don't believe therapy is for everyone and not at every space and time, of course, I firmly believe in therapy and making sure that you are in community. Therapists are part of that community with people who honor and see you as a human. My entire medical team are women of the global majority, except for my dentist, who is a man of the global majority, right? Shout out to Dr. Chow. I love him. But everybody is a woman of the global majority, from indigenous to Asian to Black to Caribbean. I'm from Barbados, so I have West Indian people on my team. Because that is where I saw value. My therapist, and I had therapy today, is Middle Eastern, because I said I needed a woman of the global majority where I didn't have to explain my humanity, right?
Yes.
I didn't have to explain it.
Yeah. Mine is too, actually, but yeah.
Right? So I don't, and that is for me, when we think about what are some of the things we can do to heal, it is getting in community with people that celebrate you, people that honor you, people that will hold you accountable. I have an incredible Black and Brown sister circle, as I call them. And when I tell you these are women that pray with me, pray for me, that we pray together, and we're battling things from whether it's divorce to cancer to childcare challenges to parents that are getting on our nerves to what do we do about this job, just being in a space where we can message and say, hey, I need you. I messaged a really good friend who was part of that last week, and I said, I'm going through so much right now. Are you available? Because I need some spiritual grounding. And that for me was incredibly healing. I had therapy the day before, so it's not like I call my therapist again. But I was able to just be covered by her. And that may be my husband. I know a few weeks ago, he probably was like, oh my God, what's going on? I think this probably I scared him the most in our marriage so far, because I called him and I said, when you get home, I need you to take a shower and I just need you to hold me. That's it. And he's like, okay, do you want to watch The Mandalorian? No. Do you want? No. I just need you to hold me. And as soon as he got out the shower, as soon as I laid on the bed and I started crying for an hour. Just, I couldn't stop. And that whole week, every time he hugged me, I was crying. But that's what I needed. And so, and everybody is not partnered in that way. And so that's different. But I also need soca and gospel because I'm from Barbados and soca is my wellness, and I'm Christian and so is gospel.
Yes.
So that means that I'm working out and I'm listening to gospel, or I'm watching a sermon, or I'm listening to soca or Afro beats. That is part of my wellness. And so when we think about what are things that people can do, it is loving yourself enough to demand of yourself that you center yourself. And by centering yourself, you can then center others. But there's only one person who can be in the middle. That's you and your spiritual identity and God, whatever that, if that is part of your experience. But that's it. Because from this center, I can now give out. But if you're trying to be the center for everyone, you have nothing to give. And it goes back to the fact that we're constantly told, particularly as women and as people of the global majority, that our experiences and our pain do not matter. You matter. Your life matters. You are valuable. There is no one that has ever been created in the history of time, or ever will be created, that is as gifted and as talented and as necessary as you are at this point in life. You are ordained for this time. You are destined for this time. It is not an accident that you are here now. Your life has meaning. Your love has meaning. Your experiences have meaning. You have meaning. And if we remind ourselves of that every day, and we put the boundaries in place that say, if it is not honoring to my humanity, then it doesn't get to experience the grace and the blessing of my humanity. That is what radical self-love is. That is what radical self-care is. And that is one way, regardless of what God you pray to, what food you eat, or what music you listen to, that you can engage radical self-love and self-care, regardless of what space you're in. Because the space of this temple of your body is the space that matters most.
Dr. Claire, Dr. Claire, Dr. Claire. I have never cried on this show before in all the years that I've done it. And you tried it today. You tried it today because I was 2 seconds away from tears. Simply amazing. Simply amazing. I started off the show saying that I was speechless as soon as you started talking, and I said absolutely nothing. And I believe that everybody that tuned in tonight can see exactly why. Amazing. We have to do this again.
Absolutely.
We have to do this. This is necessary. We have to do this again. Absolutely. We will definitely have you back on the show. Everything that you said, from this being Mental Health Awareness Month to workplace wellness, to the toxic work environments, to the weathering, to the culturally responsive approaches to healing, to caregiving. Amazing. And I thank you. I thank God for you. I thank God for your message, for your words, for your teaching, for your healing, whatever it is that happened in your journey, that you were able to curate that and cultivate that into what it is that you shared today and what it is that you do. Absolutely amazing. And I love it. And you are amazing at what it is that you do. And we will be hearing from you again soon, because these conversations are necessary, not only in the corporate environment, but on shows like this, where we're discussing the healing journey and how necessary it is. So thank you so much. I can't even thank you enough for tonight. I'll be listening to this at work tomorrow while I'm working at my desk, because I'm going to be listening back, because I always like to listen back and take notes and then go back over those notes. So I will definitely be listening to this again tomorrow. For everyone who gets a chance to listen to this on Spotify tomorrow, you are getting a gem. I don't know what else to tell you. And if you tuned into the show late on TuneIn or YouTube or Facebook this evening, make sure you go back and watch the show, because from the very beginning until right now, there is something that you will be able to get from it. Dr. Claire, how can we find you? For those that need to find you for whatever it is, in a corporate environment, for a personal environment, how can we find you?
Thank you so much. And I really do appreciate the opportunity. Right now, you can find me on LinkedIn. My website is being redeveloped, so I'll be relaunching again in a few weeks. So, and that'll be, drclairespeaks.com, but it's not live right now. But you can find me on LinkedIn, just Dr. Claire Greenforde. And I'll follow it with you and, share, contact information as well. If, your listeners or other people want to be able to connect. I'm really committed to working at the intersection of mental health, racial and social justice, and advocacy and policy, and helping organizations learn to acknowledge the humans, including themselves, that are the leaders. And so I really appreciate the opportunity. What I want to say to you is, let the tears flow, because tears are incredibly healing. There's a reason God gave us tear ducts. They release toxins from our body. And it's really important that we are able to fully feel that, the experiences. You have been a gift. I will openly share that it was such a pleasure getting to talk to you and meet you, and just, you are incredible. You really are. The fact that you are pouring out of your experiences and reshaping how you help others heal by centering healing is necessary, particularly for communities that are often racialized and marginalized. So I thank you for also being a healer and someone who centers the importance of our humanity, because that is something that has been denied. And your act of not only radical self-love, but love for other people in centering their healing journey is going to reverberate for generations to come. So I thank you for that. And I thank you and your team for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Again, for everyone who watched and everyone who listened, there were a number of people that just sent hearts to the comments or loved or were clapping in the comments. And thank you to everyone who watched, whether you watched on YouTube or Facebook, or you were listening on TuneIn, or you get to watch on Spotify tomorrow. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. And thank you again, Dr. Claire, for being here tonight. I love you all for watching. I love you all for listening. And God willing, I will be here next week. Same time, same place, different show. And good night, everybody. See you soon.